Hi learners, welcome to this session. In today's session, we are going to discuss about a new technology which is creating a revolution, that is 3D printing. Yes, you have guessed it right. This technology is designed to revolutionize the future. You won't believe me if I tell you, right in the future, we'll have anything that could be printed using this technology. Starting from mere plastics or polymers, we can go up to printing tissues. Yes. So this technology is what we are going to discuss in this session. Let's move further in depth about the topic. First of all, let us see what is 3D printing. 3D printing is also known as additive manufacturing is a process that creates three-dimensional objects by building them up layer by layer. This is completely based on a digital model. You got it right. So first step in 3D printing is developing a three-dimensional model of the product that we are going to develop. This technology has evolved over the years into a versatile and widely used technology across various industries. Right now, the technology is being used in quite many industries to develop innovative products. Let's see about 3D printing and its process. Unlike the traditional subtractive manufacturing technology, in 3D printing, each product is developed by adding the material layer by layer. I'll show you this and get back to the next step. Now, let's see the product. The first diagram or the first few steps shows you how a conventional method of manufacturing works. We have a raw material which starts on the left. Now, this raw material is sent into some conventional manufacturing method, and the outlayer or the unwanted materials are removed, and finally we have the object that we want. So in the process of removal, the unwanted waste, that is the material which is not required for the product, or the unwanted material, is evacuated or it is eliminated. So a huge amount of waste occurs here. While in the technology that we are developing today, we have the raw material only as limited as we would require. Now, this material is sent into the additive manufacturer, that is a 3D printer, and along with it, we send the three-dimensional model of the product to be developed. So we already specify the dimensions of the product, and we start building the product layer by layer, starting from the base layer. Now, what happens here is we have designed what exactly we want, and only those areas begin to be created in the product. So this avoids removal of unnecessary elements. Hence, we have quite few elements that remain as a wastage. Now I hope you understood the process. So the process is nothing but it adds up the material layer by layer to form a product. And this makes it possible to form complex geometries which otherwise is not possible using conventional methods. Now, let's have a look into the materials that can be used in a 3D printer. The first one is plastics. Yes, plastic is a common material that can be used in a 3D printer. The other materials that can be used are metals, resins, ceramics, and even food or biological materials. Here, biological materials includes living tissues. We will see this in detail later about how bioprinting works. Look at this diagram. Here we have a plastic model, which is nothing but a replica of the Eiffel Tower. So the Eiffel Tower here is first idealized as a three-dimensional model. And this model is now fed into a 3D printer. And this 3D printer also requires the raw materials of which the product is going to be developed. So now here, plastic is given as the raw material. So once plastic is inserted as a raw material, the 3D printer starts to print the object layer by layer. So it starts from the base layer and it moves upward. Here are certain methodologies that a 3D printer uses. The first one is fused deposition modeling, or shortly known as FDM. The most widely used technology of is fused deposition modeling by a 3D printer. So in this technology, we have a melting a filament or the material is extruded to build up the layers of object. So here, the raw material is sent as a fused material. Okay. The second one is stereolithography. Here we use a laser to cure the resin material. And this resin material, in the later stages, it will solidify to form the 3D printed object. This method is more known for its uniqueness and precision in creating 3D printed objects with much more effectiveness or smooth finish. The third method is using selective layer sintering. So this object takes the raw material in the form of powder, and this powder has a binding agent added to it, and using the laser, we fuse this material along with the binding agent and we send it into a mold to develop the 3D printed object. The fourth method is using digital light processing or DLP. It is similar to stereolithography, and the only difference is here we use a digital light projector to cure the resin. Whereas in stereolithography, the resin itself is in liquidated form. So in case we need to go in for high dimensional products, we can go for the method stereolithography or digital light processing. These are the steps in which a 3D printed model is developed into a 3D printed product. The first step is designing the model. Yes. So in designing the model, we can use softwares like CAD or SolidWorks, AutoCAD, or any 3D modeling software to develop the 3D printed model's blueprint. Now, the second step is slicing the model. As I told in the previous step, we are now going to build the model layer by layer. So we need to know how each layer has to be built. So once the model has been developed, this design has to be split into different layers, and each layer, what has to be printed will be given in slicing process. Now, the actual printing process starts. So while printing the model, each layer starts from the base layer and we start printing them and moving forward to get the finalized product. For this, we can use any one of the previous four methods. The next step is post-processing. In the first two methods, it requires certain steps known as post-processing in which we will have to polish the product. Next, we are going to see about few applications of 3D printing. The first one is prototyping and product development. As we know, in the manufacturing industry, developing a prototype plays a vital role. So instead of building the original product or working on the original product, the first stage is developing models or blueprints. For this, our technology known as 3D printing will give the developers or the engineers a quite range of opportunities to exhibit their creativity to their customers. The second one is healthcare and medicine. Right in the beginning, I told you that there is a technology called bioprinting. Now, this bioprinting technology can help to develop prosthetics. That is, if a person has an amputated arm, we can develop a prosthetic arm or an artificial arm or leg, which helps the person to move about. So this is the first thing that we could say. It would be a lightweight product, which is completely more lightweight compared to the traditional or conventional developing methods. Or else we can go for bioprinting the tissues itself and developing organs. So the surgeons can use 3D printed models of patients to plan for complex surgeries. Next is the aerospace or automotive industry. So in the aerospace industry, while developing parts for the aircraft, we need lightweight material. So this 3D printing technology can help in this area, that is in aerospace and also in automotive industry, in which we develop various parts of automobiles. Here are a few examples of using a 3D printer. The first one is plastic toys. The second one are mobile cases, where the user gets a personalized experience of developing his own mobile case based on his taste. So this is how we could use a movable shaft attached to a 3D printer to develop 3D printed houses. Yes, now it's in testing and hardly few buildings have been constructed. In future, we could even construct a house within 2 days. This is quite an example of how a 3D printed heart would be. If this technology becomes the future and if it becomes affordable, we could save huge amount of lives. Now, let me show you an example of how a 3D printer works.
And when it comes to printing
Yes.
human body parts, the
This is
future is
what
already
I was
here.
telling you
Just in the
about.
last few months, we have seen some pretty incredible results. One woman received a 3D printed ear implant made from her own cells as part of a clinical trial. Doctors in France were able to grow a new nose for a cancer patient using 3D printed cartilage. And
Yes, this was right now what I was telling you. The first case is how a 3D printed ear was developed, and the second case is how a 3D printed nose was regrown for a cancer patient. So the technology is not very far beyond us. Thank you, dear audience, for listening to the session. I hope you understood the concept of 3D printing and few examples of 3D printing. Thank you for the session. Thank you.